Frank gradually regained consciousness, his senses slowly returning in the dimly lit confines of the cell. Lying on his back, he felt every ache of his wounds and the pounding in his head intensified by the acrid smell of burnt flesh that permeated the air. The smoke from the earlier fire had dissipated, but its foul residue lingered stubbornly in the corners of the cell block. In the oppressive stillness of the Frank cell, a voice shattered the silence like a ghostly whisper. "Are you the pilot from earlier?" The words, stark and urgent, emanated from a neighboring cell, pulling Frank from the haze of his injuries. He coughed, the taste of smoke and burnt flesh clinging to his tongue, disorienting him as he struggled to make sense of the voice's identity. Which pilot, thought Frank? Could it possibly be Price, enduring a fate mirroring Frank's own nightmarish descent into captivity? "My name's Taylor," the voice persisted, a spectral urgency coloring its tone. "You have to get out of here while you can. I feel like I'll be stuck here forever." Frank could only imagine Taylor's presence in the adjacent darkness, a phantom ally, offering advice that could mean the difference between survival and surrender. The irony hung thick in the air, a disembodied voice offering counsel from an unseen realm. Frank strained against the darkness, his senses sharpened by adrenaline and confusion. Taylor's words seemed to echo from beyond the grave, a warning wrapped in desperation. Trapped within their separate cells, they were confined not just by metal bars, but by the cruel veil of blindness that denied them sight of each other. Frank's mind raced, grappling with the surreal notion of conversing with someone who might not be physically present, yet whose voice resonated with undeniable urgency. As Frank leaned against the cold, unforgiving bars of his cell, he wondered if Taylor's voice would be his only lifeline in this descent into uncertainty. In the surreal theater of war, where identities blurred and survival hinged on fleeting alliances, the line between friend and foe became as tenuous as the frail hope of escape. Their conversation was abruptly cut short as the walls of the cell block began to tremble violently. Frank's ears rang from the explosion that rocked the enemy compound, the shockwaves cracking walls and destabilizing what had once been a police station, now transformed into a makeshift fortress. Outside, the incessant crackle of gunfire erupted, bullets hammering the cement walls like a relentless storm, marking the imminent downfall of the oppressors. The air was rent with the anguished cries of combatants, revealing the grim reality of the ongoing siege. With a jarring clang, the door to the cell block swung open, admitting 3 enemy soldiers who rushed in from the upper floors. Panic and urgency gripped them as they fumbled to reload their weapons, their voices strained with the tension of impending danger. Suddenly, a concussion device arced through the air, thrown into the room from the spiral staircase above. "Get down!" Frank's voice boomed instinctively, the urgency palpable as he instinctively sought to protect his newfound ally. The explosive detonation unleashed a devastating blast that sent shockwaves rippling through the confined space, hurling Frank like a ragdoll to the farthest corner of his cell. Before another breath could be drawn, 2 figures clad in heavy armor stormed down the stairs, their presence a sudden beacon of hope amidst the chaos. With precision honed in battle, they unleashed a fusillade of gunfire that cut down the enemy soldiers with ruthless efficiency. These armored rescuers were a welcome reprieve, their arrival offering a fragile, yet desperately needed respite from the chaos engulfing the derelict police station. As they stood, silhouetted against the backdrop of cracked walls and the relentless onslaught outside, Frank couldn't help but wonder if they were friend or foe in this tumultuous theater of war. Outside, the chaos of the siege intensified, punctuated by distant explosions and the staccato rhythm of gunfire. The walls of the cell block trembled intermittently, as if the very structure of their captivity was being tested by the violence raging beyond. The armored figures moved swiftly and efficiently through the room, their movements deliberate amidst the chaos that enveloped the police station turned fortress. Ignoring Frank's presence in his cell for the most part, they methodically searched the bodies of the fallen enemies they had just dispatched. Above them, the battle continued to rage with deafening gunfire echoing through the building, marking a desperate last stand for those defending against the siege. Abruptly, As if the very ceiling had erupted in a storm of violence, bullets punched through the floor above, raining down into the cell block below. The air filled with the sharp cracks of gunfire and the metallic clang of rounds ricocheting off the steel bars, leaving pockmarked craters in the cement floor. Frank instinctively ducked into the far corner of his cell, arms shielding his head from the lethal onslaught. In stark contrast, the two armored soldiers remained composed, their unique uniforms bearing insignias unfamiliar to Frank, evoking an aura of seasoned warriors accustomed to the horrors of combat. From his cramped vantage point, Frank observed as the soldiers meticulously scoured the fallen enemies for valuable intelligence amidst the chaos. Their movements were swift yet deliberate, betraying no hint of hesitation or fear despite the surrounding turmoil. As they prepared to leave and rejoin the battle upstairs, one of the soldiers glanced briefly towards Taylor's cell, a fleeting expression of regret crossing his face, seemingly unaware of Frank's own dire situation. Their departure, however, was violently interrupted. A sudden barrage of gunfire burst down the spiral staircase, catching the first soldier off guard. He staggered under the impact, his armor absorbing several hits before he dropped to his knees, struggling to maintain his footing. His companion reacted swiftly, shouting in defiance as he returned fire up the staircase. Then, with blinding suddenness, a brilliant flash engulfed the staircase. The injured soldier, caught in the heart of the explosion, bore the brunt of its force. He was flung violently against the bars of Frank's cell, his once protective armor now twisted and ineffective, a grim testament to the indiscriminate brutality of warfare. Meanwhile, the second soldier wrestled desperately with his blazing shoulders, discarding his weapon in a frantic bid to extinguish the flames. Smoke billowed through the air as he tore off his burning armored vest, each movement a testament to his resolve amidst the chaos. As the smoke cleared, a new threat emerged. An enemy soldier descended the spiral staircase with lethal intent, landing amidst the scattered debris of his fallen comrades. In an instant, he unleashed a torrent of gunfire with deadly precision, the sharp reports reverberating through the cell block. The soldier's body, fragile without the precious armor it once wore, shattered like glass as it spasmed under the impact, jerking violently in a futile attempt to escape the inevitable. Blood mingled with the dust and debris, painting a macabre tableau of sacrifice in this theater of cruelty. Frank's breath caught in his throat, the horror of the scene etching itself into his soul. As the echoes of gunfire faded into an eerie silence, leaving only the haunting whispers of smoking gunshot wounds, Frank felt a profound sense of despair envelop him. It was a chilling realization that in this relentless struggle for survival, compassion and mercy were luxuries long forsaken. The enemy soldier, indifferent to the life he had extinguished, turned away from the fallen trooper and melted back up the stairs and into the shadows of the besieged fortress. As gunfire continued to echo through the building above, Frank's voice cut through the chaos, calling out desperately to Taylor. "Taylor, you still alive?" His words hung in the air, unanswered, the gurgling last breaths of one of the fallen enemy soldiers lying just outside his cell the only response. "Did they get you?" Frank asked again, his hope wavering as silence greeted his inquiry. A heavy sigh escaped his lips, disappointment sinking in as the harsh reality settled upon him. He was alone now, truly alone. The fleeting companionship he had found in Taylor, now lost, left Frank grappling with a profound sense of loneliness and despair. They had only just met, yet Frank felt a deep pang of sorrow for his fallen comrade. Amidst the relentless gunfire rattling through the night air, Frank leaned wearily against the cold, unforgiving wall of his cell. His mind churned with bitter thoughts of defeat and impending doom. The insanity unfolding around him seemed to ebb slowly, the intensity of the fighting diminishing as one side gained a tentative upper hand over the other. In the murky depths of the besieged fortress, the outcome of this deadly clash remained uncertain. Tired and discouraged, Frank mustered his strength, leaning forward and calling out to Taylor once more. "Come on, friend. I need you right now. We have to find a way out of here." His eyes scanned the area outside Taylor's cell, spotting the weapon of one of the fallen soldiers within reach. "Look, if you can reach out and grab that gun, we might have a chance to shoot the locks open," Frank suggested with a glimmer of hope. "Damn it, you must be knocked out. You have to be." Frank's voice trailed off as he slumped back against the unforgiving concrete. The harsh reality of his situation weighed heavily on him. Escaping this hellhole would require not just courage, but the kind of luck that defied odds. Frank knew he was facing a battle against time, against fate itself. As moments stretched into agonizing minutes, Frank's mind raced with plans for a potential ambush if he ever managed to break free from his cell. Every scenario played out in his thoughts, strategizing how he could turn the tables on those who held him captive, catch them off guard. At this point, Frank was willing to risk anything, to do whatever it took to regain his freedom and defy the cruel fate that seemed to have conspired against him. The passing minutes felt interminable to Frank as he lay confined in his cell, each second stretching into what seemed like endless hours. Clinging desperately to hope felt akin to a mountain climber holding onto the frayed remnants of a rope, teetering on the edge of despair. Thoughts raced through Frank's mind at a frantic pace, swirling like a maelstrom of uncertainty and dread. Would Taylor ever stir from unconsciousness? The concussion blast had erupted closer to Frank's own cell, leaving him anxious about Taylor's well-being. What had befell Taylor? And what about Price? Was Taylor referring to him when he mentioned a pilot who had been present mere hours ago? Countless questions tormented Frank, each one a shard driving deeper into his psyche, pushing him ever closer to the brink of madness. Where had the officer gone, the one who had brought him here? Would he return, a harbinger of death in this sea of uncertainty? Or had he been swallowed up by the chaos unfolding beyond the cell block's walls? Who would emerge victorious from the battle raging outside, the outcome of which remained shrouded in the fog of war? These unanswered queries spun endlessly through Frank's mind, an incessant pandemonium drowning out the distant echoes of gunfire that now ebbed into sporadic skirmishes. The once deafening roar of battle had yielded to a haunting silence occasionally punctuated by the distant rumbles of street fights, sounding as though they belonged to another world altogether. In place of the tumultuous uproar, a new chorus emerged, a ceaseless buzz that filled the air, born of a horde of flies feasting upon the grim tableau of carnage that adorned the cell block. Raising his gaze to the ceiling, Frank recalled its earlier transformation into a conduit for merciless hellfire, bullets tearing through its surface in a rain of destruction upon the cell block below. Now, crimson droplets trickled down from above, a macabre reminder of the brutal struggle that unfolded upstairs. A desperate last stand, perhaps not unlike the harrowing scene that had unfolded before Frank's eyes while he languished in his cell. Days had elapsed since Frank's last meal. How long? He couldn't tell, but now hunger gnawed at his stomach with relentless insistence. He winced as his hand instinctively pressed against his abdomen, feeling the ache of emptiness gnawing within. Yet, amidst the discomfort, there lingered a grim sense of relief, a stark reminder that his suffering stemmed from hunger rather than a more dire fate, providing a fleeting moment of solace amid the chaos and uncertainty that enveloped him. As Frank lay sprawled on the cold, grimy floor of his cell, his stomach twisted in hunger and pain, he sensed a palpable tension in the air. The ceiling above him bore witness to the recent violence, riddled with bullet holes through which flickering shadows danced ominously. Drips of crimson from the wounds above splattered sporadically, like morbid punctuation marks in the dimness of his confinement. Footsteps echoed down the spiral staircase, signaling the approach of figures from the floor above. The battle outside had ceased, but the aftermath hung heavy in the air, a thick fog of uncertainty swirling around Frank's mind. Was it the lone enemy soldier he had glimpsed last, returning to finish what he had started? Or had the comrades of the dead stormtroopers outside his cell emerged as the victors in this relentless conflict? Such questions gnawed at Frank's sanity, illustrating the ever-shifting nature of war where alliances and enemies blurred with every passing moment. Governments of the day changed hands like cards in a poker game, each turnover costing countless lives for the gain of a few. The pervasive destruction wrought by human hands felt as relentless as it was senseless, leaving Frank to ponder the brutal realities of conflict that shaped his existence. In a sudden, surreal twist of fate, Frank's worst fears materialized before him. Through the door at the base of the stairs strode his nemesis, the officer, now bearing a tightly gripped pistol and a damaged arm slung across his chest in a makeshift sling. Even the officer wasn't spared the scars of the battle that had erupted outside while Frank lay captive in his cell. The decrepit walls of the cell block bore witness to the officer's return, accompanied by 3 of his men who followed him with unwavering determination. With cold efficiency, one soldier unlocked Frank's cell door, while another delivered a bone-jarring kick that sent the door crashing violently against the adjacent wall. The officer's men poured into the cell like mafia enforcers, their boots raining down blows upon Frank's battered body in a vicious reprise of his initial arrival. Pain erupted through Frank's senses, each impact threatening to plunge him back into the abyss of unconsciousness from which he had only recently emerged. Yet, amidst the cacophony of brutality, a voice from the neighboring cell pierced the chaos, an unexpected ally demanding an end to the onslaught. "He's alive! It's Taylor!" Frank's mind raced at the revelation, struggling to reconcile Taylor's survival with the horrors unfolding before him. Taylor, presumably unconscious from the earlier concussion blast, had somehow defied the odds and survived the onslaught. The soldiers abruptly ceased their assault, flipping Frank onto his bruised chest and seizing his arms to haul him out of the cell. "Taylor!" Frank cried out desperately, his voice echoing through the dank corridors, momentarily unsettling even the officer who led the procession out of the cell block. The officer's dismissive comment provoked laughter among his soldiers, adding a cruel layer of mockery to the grim scene unfolding. As Frank was dragged back up the staircase, his gaze flickered towards Taylor's cell in a fleeting attempt to confirm his survival. What he beheld shattered the fragile remnants of his sanity. A charred cell, its walls blackened as if scorched by an inferno, and within it, the ghastly remains of a skeleton fused grotesquely to the bars. Dread crept into Frank's mind, overwhelming him with questions that bordered on madness. What had happened to Taylor? How had such a fate befallen him? Frank's mind struggled to find answers to the chaos, avoiding the inevitable question, when did that happen to Taylor? The boundaries between reality and hallucination blurred in Frank's mind, exacerbated by the trauma of war and the relentless brutality of his captors. Were Taylor and the soldiers in the APC from days ago mere apparitions? Phantoms conjured by his fractured psyche to cope with the horrors of captivity? Or had they been real, tangible allies in a harrowing struggle for survival? As Frank grappled with these tormenting uncertainties, another question loomed large. What about Captain Price? Was he really held captive in this hellish place, maybe subjected to the same merciless torment that now threatened to consume Frank's sanity? The weight of these unanswered questions bore down upon him. In the suffocating grip of despair, Frank's mind teetered on the brink of collapse, his thoughts spiraling into the abyss of madness. The thin thread of hope that had sustained him flickered in the darkness, threatening to snap under the weight of unbearable uncertainty and the relentless cruelty of his circumstances.